Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to this Christmas horror movie review as part of my Christmas holiday horror movie series for the month of December here. So, today I'm going to be taking a look at and reviewing a remake of a very popular classic horror film, and that is Black Xmas from 2006, the remake of the 1974 original Black Christmas. So yeah, it's the first time I'd seen the remake that I watched it for this review. Um, I have the unrated version here that has a few special features. I don't know if you can see those with the lighting here, but so yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it with the setup and the premise and the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which I'll tell you right now is fairly mixed. So Black Christmas, or Black Xmas as it's abbreviated here, is a 2006 slasher film written and directed by Glenn Morgan. The film takes place several days before Christmas and tells the story of a group of sorority sisters who are stalked and murdered in their house during a winter storm. It's a loose remake on the 1974 film of the same name. It's a co production of Canada and the United States. The film was produced by Morgan and James Wan through their production company, Hard Eight Pictures, along with 2929 Productions. So basically, this movie it kind of has a lot of flashback or exposition told by characters that take us back to a young killer, Billy Lenz, a boy who's born with severe jaundice, is constantly abused by his mother, Constance. And with the help of her lover, she murders Billy's father, which he witnesses on Christmas Eve 1975, and buries the body in the house's crawl space. She imprisons him in the attic after he witnesses it. She ends up impregnating herself by Billy because her boyfriend is impotent, I guess, to conceive another child who ends up being Agnes, her daughter. Billy ends up gouging out Agnes's eyes, murders her mother and her boyfriend, and escapes on Christmas Day, 1991. So then, 15 years later, on Christmas Eve, Billy, now 36, escapes from his cell and heads to his former home, now a sorority house for Delta Alpha Kappa at Clement University in New Hampshire. At the house, Claire Crosby, one of the sorority girls, is murdered in the bedroom by an unknown figure. Meanwhile, Megan Helms begins to hear noises and goes to the attic to investigate. Upon finding Claire's corpse, Megan is attacked and killed by the same assailant. If I'm rushing through it, or it sounds like I'm kind of annoyed by the setup and the premise of this movie, there's a reason for it, but you'll soon find out. Let's just go ahead and get into the cast though before I hit my review. Cast wise, we have Katie Cassidy as Kelly Presley, Michelle Trachtenberg as Melissa Kitt, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Heather Fitzgerald, Lacey Chabert as Dana Mathis, Kristen Cloak as Lee Colvin, Andrea Martin as Barbara McHenry, and Crystal Lowe as Lauren Hannon. Those are just basically most of the main characters, not everybody in the movie, but so yeah, this is interesting. Black Xmas. So obviously, I've heard a lot of things about this movie, mostly on the negative side, and I was going into it. I came into it with an open mind. Obviously, I'd seen the 1974 movie. I have a review up on my channel. I think it was the first review I did as part of this series. But I got this movie for $3 or $4 through eBay, I think, so not a tremendous investment in it. And I thought I would check it out and do a review on it as part of this series. So, one of the best horror movies of the year, according to John Monahan from the Detroit Free Press. Oh, John. John. Oh, John. Let's just get into my review with it, though. So, I'm not going to spend the next 10 minutes shitting on this movie. That's going to be a tremendous goal that I make for myself to try to uphold. There were things I liked about this movie, more things that I didn't. Um, and I'm going to try not to, but it's impossible not to compare it to the 1974 original classic, Black Christmas. It's just impossible because even though it's not a shot for shot rehash of that movie, it's obviously based on that movie enough to where there's no way I can review this movie without having comparisons. So Let's just go ahead and get into it. We'll start with the good stuff. We'll start with the pros. There are things about this movie that I liked or that I thought were well done. So it's not a complete dumpster fire. Um, I give them credit for the fact that they didn't just rehash the same movie from 1974 with a modern look and feel. They changed the story up and went in some different directions. So I give them credit for originality and creativity in that respect. You know, too many remakes nowadays, they just end up being a rehash of the original movie. And in a lot of cases, those original movies didn't need to be remade in the first place because they're really good. So I give credit to remakes when they actually change it up a bit. And this movie does that. It's definitely not a remake or a complete rehash, I should say, of the original, which it's a good thing because I hold the original in such high esteem and high regard that I don't know if I would have had anything good to say about it if that had been the case. So I give them credit for that. The movie looks really good. It's well shot. There's lots of colors, lots of good camera work, good angles. This movie's pretty well done from a technical standpoint. It really is. From the cinematography to the directing to the producing, set design. I think it looks really good. So it's pretty easy on the eyes in that respect. Like I do with all of these movies as part of this series, got to talk about the Christmas atmosphere, and this movie really does a good job of knocking it out of the park in terms of the Christmas atmosphere, from the lights to the trees, the Christmas presents, the snow outside, and the winter storm that's going on around Christmas. The overall setting of this movie is just a very Christmas feelsy kind of movie, Christmas atmosphere movie to the utmost, and I would say maybe even a little bit more so than the original, which is probably the only compliment I'll give this movie over the original. And I'm saying maybe. I'm not even saying that it blows the original out of the way in terms of Christmas atmosphere, but I'm trying to be nice. Um, I didn't think now, this is kind of a two sided mirror. I didn't think the acting was horrible by the actresses in this movie. It's certainly not outstanding, but I didn't think it was horrible, especially by Katie Cassidy, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and Kristen Cloak. I thought those three kind of stood out as being. They did a pretty good job given what they had to work with, which we're going to get into a little bit more. But I thought they were good for the most part. Um, yeah, I thought those three stood out more than the rest of them. And the movie has a lot of gore, blood, brutality, and violence. So if you're all about movies, all about horror movies, um, you know, for the gore, if you're gore hounds and you're all about the gore and the blood and the brutality and the violence, especially for a Christmas movie, then you'll probably really like this movie, to be honest with you, because this movie definitely has a lot of gore. It has a lot of blood. It's very violent and brutal, not just in terms of the kills, but in terms of what they do with some of the results of the kills, which I'm gonna try not to give too much away. So it's good in that regard for all the gore hounds out there. Definitely more gory than the original. The original was actually based on tension and horror. This movie is based on trying to be as gory as it can be in 2006. I didn't mind the way that the movie began, giving us a kill right off the bat. Kind of a parallel of the famous plastic bag over the head kill that we get in the original. Um, I didn't mind it. Now the movie does kind of jump around, as I said before. It starts at the modern time of 2006 at this sorority house, and then through character exposition, it cuts back to Billy as a kid and everything that I described in the premise of the movie. But the first on screen thing that we get is that kill. So I didn't mind it. I thought that's kind of an effective way to introduce the movie and kind of get the audience to know it's not going to be boring. Um, I thought it was cool too that Andrea Martin was back in the movie. She played Phil Phyllis in the original 1974 movie, for those of you that don't know. I thought it was kind of a nice touch. Obviously, in this movie, she plays Mrs. Mack, as sort of the sorority mother, whatever they call it. And I also thought that the effects, for the most part, were pretty good in this movie, whether it be mostly the gore effects, the kill effects as it relates. I didn't think none of them were overly like CGI'd or overly bad. I thought the effects were pretty decent. So yeah, those are my pros for Black Xmas 2006. Let's get into the cons. So the biggest con, Not the only con, but the biggest con that stands out to me. And again, this is where the comparisons are unavoidable. This movie creates the biggest sin, my biggest pet peeve, in that they gave way too much, and I mean way too much, explanation, backstory, and exposition on the killer. Once again, they gave us answers to questions that no one was asking. Which, if you know my content, you know my opinions and my horror videos. I hate it when films do that. I hate it when they give us answers to questions that nobody's asking, and this film does that to the utmost. What made the original so good and so classic is that they did not do that. So that right off the bat is definitely the biggest con with this movie. They just give way too much exposition and motivation for the killer. It's a little bit like Rob Zombie's Halloween in that regard. That was my one big pet peeve with those movies, even though they're not as bad as everybody says. Um, but by doing that, this movie completely takes away from the suspense, the tension, the horror of the idea of Black Christmas, how they delivered in the 1974 movie. It's just that none of that is here because, like I said, and a lot of it is in large part because of how much they explain. They basically have characters on camera throughout the course of this movie that are telling you all about Billy, his sister, how he grew up, what happened to him. Okay, don't care. All the characters in this movie are completely bland in the fact that they're poorly written and not developed at all. They have no kind of backstory. There's really just a bunch of young females, some of which are good actresses or become good actresses. They're just kind of there for the eye candy, if you will. But that's about it. As far as their characters go, there's really nothing to grab onto. There's nothing to where we care that much about them when they're killed, or if, you know, any of these characters when and if they get killed, they don't give us anything. Why would we care? And then the first movie they did a much better job in that regard. Not perfect across the board, but certainly our main characters they gave us much more to go on, to where we cared about the characters. I was never scared for a second watching this movie. It just kind of felt like the typical 2000 slasher where everything is shown, including the killers. There's no mystery. There's no horror. Yeah, just very 2000s cliche slasher horror movie. Nothing scary at all about it. The whole angle they took, like I said, I gave them credit for trying something different, but that doesn't mean the directions they took worked or were executed well. So the whole family and sister angle backstory of Billy really did nothing for me. It didn't add anything good to the story. Very cliche, kind of weak and predictable. The ending of this movie was totally lame as well. Very cliche 2000s. We get characters making a lot of dumb decisions, lots of lame story and plot conveniences to move the story along, to move the movie along, I should say. They try to have this big twist reveal towards the end of the movie with the sister of Billy, which was so anticlimactic and obvious. And the sister herself is god awful and a waste to begin with. Didn't care about any of that. And then I'll say that I don't know the makers of this film definitely have an obsession with eyes and eyeballs because this movie is all about eye gouging, eyeball eating, eyeball showing, adds nothing but flashy gore to I guess try to impress the gore hounds, the people that really get off on seeing other people eat eyeballs in front of the camera. So I don't know, guys. Is this the worst horror movie I've ever seen? No. It's not even the worst 2000s movie I've ever seen. And I do think it suffers by the fact that it's kind of a remake of the original classic from 1974. I think if that movie didn't exist, this might be a little bit better. But that being said, I still don't think it would be great. I really don't. Um, so I think I'm going to have to give this movie. I'm going to be generous. It's the Christmas season, so I'm going to be Santa Claus. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I was thinking about giving it a 6 or a 6.5. But the Christmas atmosphere, the eye candy with the actresses in the movie, the fact that they tried something different with some creativity, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because of those things. I think it's mostly because of the Christmas atmosphere, though, because this movie has loads and loads of Christmas atmosphere. So that's going to be enough to save it from being less than a 7. 7 out of 10. But if you want to watch Black Christmas, check out the '74 original, which is a classic. This is a pretty weak remake in my opinion. Not the worst, but pretty weak. 7 out of 10 is my rating. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of Black Xmas, the remake from 2006. Tell me what you liked about it. If you thought there were things that were better than the original, what you didn't like about it, if you agree with my review. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell below so you don't miss any of my upcoming movie reviews for this series. And please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my great horror content, including what I have coming up the first couple months of 2022, which I'll have a video on that before the end of this month, therefore the end of the year as well. So, thank you for watching this review. I hope everybody's having happy holidays. Stay scared. Bye.